Welcome to another story time. Today's story is called A Small Company with a Big Impact. So, we've been talking about some companies. We've talked about Airbnb and Twitch. And we saw that they all had a lot of problems in the beginning and they changed their idea a lot. But we didn't really talk that much about what are some of the problems that come with starting your own company. What do you guys think? Name me 3 things that you think are big problems that normally, companies that have existed for a long time don't have. Andrew, go ahead.
Okay, so I have 2 things. One is money, because it's hard to get investments when you're a small company and stuff.
Of course.
And 2 is legal stuff, because you get sued a lot.
Both very good points. Very good. Sydney, you also had your hand up. What were you going to say?
I was gonna say money,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also I don't know.
Money is a very good answer. Yeah. Alex, you have your hand up.
More experience, and the other companies have because it's quite hard to do marketing when you're a small company.
Exactly.
Nobody's just gonna look.
No one knows about you, right? I mean, you go into the store and you see Coca-Cola. Everyone in the world basically at this point knows what that is, right? But I mean, who knows what curly brackets is? I mean, most people that are going to see this, if you're watching on YouTube, probably the first time that you've heard about curly brackets.
Finn has his.
It's also, yeah, Finn, go ahead.
Have you been sued?
If I have been sued personally?
Yeah.
I have not been sued. No, not yet. Not looking forward to.
But we almost sued someone.
Yeah.
Haha.
Yeah. So that definitely right. It comes with starting your own thing. All right. So you guys all
Move your microphone more
away. Okay. Sorry.
Too loud.
All right. So not enough money, no interest, no brand awareness, just a couple of the things that are difficult for new companies. But what happens when you have these problems? What that usually leads to for most companies is that it is a lot of stress. I mean, when you have a normal desk job at an insurance company that have existed for 80 years, you basically know what your day is going to be like. You go to work, you do your thing, you have coffee, you have lunch, you chat with your coworkers, you do a little bit of work, and then you come home, right? And you get your paycheck at the end of the month. But in a startup, in a young company, things are changing all the time, right? That leads to a lot of stress. Long working hours, taking your job home. Even when you're home, you have like people coming on your website chat, asking about questions, what about this? What about that? You don't have any people that are working full time on that. So you as the founder, early employees have to do those things, right? Or you can do those things. Working weekends, rushing to meet deadlines. That's a big one. A lot of meetings. Just some of the things that come with starting your own company. Now, is it always like that? What if it could be different? I want to talk about one company that wanted to do it very differently from the very beginning. This company has some things that they really believe in and that they really work hard to make sure that the employees are people that are like this. So they have a rule, 8-hour days. That might seem to a lot of you, especially in Norway. I mean, what's so groundbreaking about that? But there are a lot of countries around the world where 8-hour days, a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, I mean, are you doing a part-time job? I'm a real entrepreneur. I work 14 hours a day minimum, and I also work Saturdays. It's a badge of honor that a lot of people have. 40-hour work weeks, no weekend work. You have your weekend, you don't have to think about work at all. Do other things, hang out with your kids, play video games, go rock climbing, whatever you want to do. Almost no meetings, no rushing, to like push out some things at certain deadlines that a lot of companies struggle with. And another thing that they started way back in 1999 is that you can work from anywhere. This was 20 years before Corona happened. So they've been doing it for a long time. Now this company, I'm not going to even ask you, but I'm pretty sure that none of you have heard about it. It's called Basecamp. And this company started back in 1999. It was a very different company back then than it is now. As we've seen with so many other companies, you start out with an idea and then you change it over time. It was started by this guy called Jason Fried and three of his partners who are not still with the company. He is the person who's still there. And he started making websites. That's what he could do. He was a designer. So he got a couple of his people and then they started making websites. Back in 1999, it was a very different time. Most businesses didn't know. Most businesses didn't even know what a website was, a lot of them, right? But some of them were like, we need a website because it's this new thing and we want to make sure that we have a thing up there. Can you make us a website? And that was their thing. They were taking client work for money and they would deliver a product which would be a website. That's what they started with. But Jason had this blog that he started way early, and he would just blog about like his experiences, his insights, and his thoughts. And so a couple of years later, he needed help with something, and he asked, can someone help me with some programming? I'm trying to put something up. And there was a person called David Heinemeier Hansen, who, by the way, actually is a Scandinavian. He is a Danish person. And he reached out because he was reading Jason's blog, and he said, I can help you with that. And David, who was living in Denmark at the time, actually started working with Jason, who was living in Chicago in the US. And so even though they weren't physically together in the same office, they still started working. And this was around, I think, in the early 2000s. Now, when David started working, he wasn't a co-founder yet with Jason. But a little bit later on, excuse me, yeah, I just burped. I just had food before this thing. So what they started doing was that they had client work, right? And they were using email to communicate with their clients. And the thing about email is that email is good for some things, and for some other things, it's not very good. And this is like almost 20 years ago, and they're running into problems like we're sending out these emails to update the client about some stuff, but they ask us questions back and we can never make sure that they fully understood things. We really need to make something that is better than email. Can we just do that? And then David was the person, because he was the programmer, and they thought, you know what, let David create something, and he's going to spend 10 hours of his week building this thing. They didn't really have a name for this thing. They just called it the thing. And he started building it. And in about 3 months, they had a version 1 that looked pretty simple. It looks something like this. This is them, by the way, in just a video call together. They still don't work in the same office. It looks something like this. It was very, very simple. It was basically a way to just like write down things that you were supposed to do, like a to-do list type of thing, messages that you can send between your coworkers and also the client, and then some files and some things like that. It was very, very simple. But what started happening was that the clients started using this because they would use this thing that they built for themselves to work with their clients. And then the clients started asking, what is that thing? Like this thing that you send us, what is that thing? And then Jason says, it's this thing that we made. Like we want this thing. Can I buy this thing? I want to use it for my business. And then I said, well, we can't really do that because it's only our thing. But they had client after client who started asking them that. And this is where a lot of businesses start this way, or at least evolve this way, where you've built something for yourself to make your life easier, but other people see the value in it and they ask you. Whenever you've made something like that and people start asking you for that, that's usually a very good sign. So a light bulb, it was this like light bulb moment, and they thought, we need to create this thing as a separate thing, and then we need to sell it as a product. And that's exactly what they did. And so Basecamp now is one of the most popular project management software. And since we actually build projects, this is something that you can use if you want to manage your projects this way. I'm not going to spend too much time, telling you exactly how it works, but this is just a couple of things that you can do in this software. Still very popular. Now, there was another thing that happened because David was working on this thing, and he basically invented this web development framework while building this, because he took this language that he really, really loves called Ruby, and he started making websites with it, which is not something that people really started doing at that point, because Ruby was a language that people just kind of liked, but it wasn't like Java or C or anything like those big languages that people were making applications. But he thought that he could actually use Ruby to make websites because he liked so many of the things that were in Ruby, and he really felt happy while programming, which is not the case with, for example, some Java programmers from that time especially. Happiness is not exactly something that you feel writing Java code. That was at least his experience. So that's what he did. And what he did then is that after Basecamp was released, he took out the part that was that web framework part, and he created this own web framework called Ruby on Rails that he then put on online for anyone to use for free. And do you guys know what that type of software is called when you make it free and anyone can contribute to it? There's like a word for it. Have you guys heard about it? Finn, yeah, go ahead. I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Either shareware or freeware.
Shareware, freeware, that's close. Andrew?
Open source.
Open source, that was the word I was looking for, yeah. So open source is like this thing that you can use and other people can contribute to it too. So he started Ruby on Rails. It started growing super, super fast. And the main reason for that was that Ruby on Rails innovated on a couple of things whereas putting up a website before took several hours, sometimes, not even hours, what am I saying? Several weeks to put up. With Ruby on Rails, you could get started really fast. And David himself made a little video early, and he made a video that was, I think, half an hour long, where he showed people how to make a blog and put it up. And so people were blown away by it. So many people that were like designers and not really hardcore programmers came to programming because of Ruby on Rails. It really changed things. Now, this is where the big impact comes from, because Basecamp is a very small company, and they like to be small. They're only 57 people. And their competitors, some bigger companies like, for example, Asana or some other project management companies, they're in the hundreds of people that work as employees. But what happened was that after Rails came out, some big companies, that actually some of them that we've already talked about, started using it, and they built their technology using Ruby on Rails. Here are just some examples. Airbnb that we talked about 2 weeks ago, Ruby on Rails. Same with Twitch, GitHub, for those of you who know that, Urban Dictionary, SoundCloud, Shopify, and Kickstarter as well. And these are just some of the many examples that are out there. Do you guys know one other company that uses Ruby on Rails to make their web application? I wonder which company that could be. Yes, Andrew?
Just going to guess. Random guess here. Facebook.
Good guess. Not Facebook. It's actually another company.
Curly brackets.
There you have it, Tagat. Curly brackets, what I was after. We also use Ruby on Rails. And it's just a great framework to make websites really quickly and in a good and stable way.
But Rafa, tell
Yes.
me one thing though. So, I don't know if the guys remember they got this point, but for a lot of startups and a lot of companies in Silicon Valley and all those nice places, it's very normal to work so much that you don't sleep and you don't see your family, and then you sleep in the in the office
Under your desk, yep.
under the desk and stuff like that.
Yep.
But what type of setup does Basecamp have? And what type of philosophy do they have?
That is a very good question. Because at the end, I was going to have this kind of moral of the story, or what we can learn from this. And that is that you can create your own dream place, dream workplace. And that's what they really thought about really early on, is that we are not going to be just mesmerized by the new shiny thing that's really popular at the time. There's so many companies that have been started and also died, between the time since Basecamp started. And a lot of those companies were so big, and then, things happened and then they went out of business. But Basecamp has had these really strong opinions about how you can run a place. For example, it was very important for them to hire the best people in the world, not just the best people in their neighborhood in, Silicon Valley or Chicago. So they have programmers and designers from everywhere in the world working there. It was very important for them to be able to give their employees not only just, the satisfaction of being able to do work, but if you work there, you also get some time off. So I think, not exactly sure about this, but I think every 3 years there, they give you 3 months of paid vacation, basically, where you can do whatever you want with that time. Not only that, they give you also a lot of money every year so that not only you can go on a vacation, but you can take your entire family on vacation anywhere that you want. And you can also, if you really like, I don't know, creating music or creating your own side project or doing whatever, they also have a stipend for that so that you can use, you can buy courses, you can go to, a place to learn something. All of those things you get as part of being a company. So they really thought about like, what is the type of company that we want to create so that we want to work there not only for 2 years and burn ourselves out and then end up in the hospital or go to another company like a lot of these Silicon Valley companies will do. But they thought, how can we make a place where people wouldn't mind working with us for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years even. And so a lot of the people that started at Basecamp a long time ago are still there. And I think at the end of the day, they are able to succeed because of this reason. Because if you can really create a place where people love being, and it's not just about work, it's a pretty great place to work at.
Sydney, you have your hand up.
Also, Netflix and Hulu also used what was it? Ruby on Rails.
Ruby on Rails? You Googled that? Yeah? Yeah, Hulu. I know for sure. I didn't even know that Netflix used it. Yeah, it's a very popular one. And you know what, Sydney, if you I know that you're in the design track. Ruby on Rails is actually one of those programming languages that even if you're not so much into programming, when you see it and if you have a teacher to show you, like get set up with it and try it out, you can see how easy it is and you can see why people like it so much, because it's designed by a person who's not a programmer, who was born a programmer, who's been programming since he was 5 years old. It's designed by a person who are people that really thought about so many things, is that it should be easy to do things. And yeah, so it's a really cool language to start with. It's actually one of my favorite.
Maybe Sydney can make herself a little landing page for the game.
Absolutely, I'd love to teach you guys. I know Ruby on Rails and I've been programming in it for a couple of years now. Great language to get started on. All right, so that was our little story time. Last question that I want to ask you guys is that, think for a second, what would be some things that you would introduce in your very different workplace if you were to start your own company? Could be anything that you want. What is it that you would introduce?
Like some perks, you mean?
Perks, yeah. A rule of being able to only work 20 hours a week if you're done with your work. Could be anything.
Wait, first, for any company?
For any company, this is your company, your imaginary company that you're making in the future.
Your imaginary company, what would be like one of the cool things that you would make a rule
I would make a cool thing where if you get someone to buy something from my game, you get free money.
Cool. Andrew, go ahead.
I would make it so that you have like a to-do list every day,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you finish your to-do list for that day, you could do something that you wanted to do.
So you're like free to go basically. You're done.
Yeah.
Really cool idea. Does it actually make sense to think that every single person in the world should work 40 hours a week, regardless of if they're building buildings or programming?
No.
Maybe it should be based on something else. A very cool idea. Alex, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that you have in the week you have one large task
Mm-hmm.
that you work on,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you finish, you're free to do whatever you want.
Also a good idea. I mean, let's say that today you only want to focus on adding this one new feature on the website. You don't want to be doing that for 2 hours and then switching to doing emails and then doing something else and then doing meetings. I really like that idea.
Here's an interesting thing that you guys, two of you already mentioned that it should be like task based rather than time based, and I'm assuming that the main point here is that you still get paid the same money you would have paid if you worked longer, if you complete your task much faster.
Right.
And an interesting thing to think about is that the common workday of an 8-hour workday was created back in the day. It was a revolution back then. No kind of argument here, but back then when it was created, it was factories that were local people were working at the local factories. They were standing in front of the factory line, and they were doing a repetitive task day after day, 8 hours straight. And that way you can mathematically very, 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 very easily count how much productivity you get out of one day. But right now, the tasks are so varied. We also sometimes have a humongous commute time to our workplace because we live in different places. And so it's kind of a little revolution is brewing in the workforces, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes, Andrew.
Because, so in my work model, so if you work a 15-hour day and you finish a task, like a big task, then you get the same amount of pay as somebody who works 2 hours. So if you work a 15-hour day, 14 to make the math easier, a 14-hour day, one day, and you'll get paid the same as somebody who works 2-hour days for a week.
That would just annoy people.
I was watching a very interesting live with one of the head designers in one company, and he was talking about how for business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a businessman, the thing you value the most is time. So should you pay someone if you're ordering a logo, say, and the person is able to provide you with a killer logo in 1 hour, should you pay that person more than a person who will be able to provide you with a killer logo in 20 hours or less?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people make an argument that if it took you so little time, I shouldn't pay you that much.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a good point.
It's not the time, is it? It's
Yeah.
the result that we care about.
And shouldn't you be happy that you're getting something faster? Shouldn't that be worth more? Yeah.
Interesting discussion.
I just like to say one last thing.
Tage was saying something.
Tage, go ahead.
I feel like
annoy people.
a good logo that was made real fast. I think that might show a little bit of skill that they're able to do something really
Exactly. Such a good point. Yeah, but that's not how the industry is. Last thing I'd like to say, also, by any chance, if any of the people at Basecamp are watching, especially Jason or David, I'd like to say thank you to you guys, because one thing that they introduced some time ago called the 6-week cycle was a thing that they introduced, which was you start with a project that you want to do and you figure out exactly what you want to do, kind of, and then you plan it first, and then you use 6 weeks to actually build it, and then you put it out into the world, however big or small it is. Can anyone guess what I'm talking about here that it's related to us? Yes, Andrew?
The 9-week cycle.
The 9-week cycle is exactly that concept, a little bit changed and modified to fit our company. Thank you very much. It's working very well so far for us. And so, they created something that now other companies are also learning from. So that's really cool.
Fourth wall breaker.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go, people.
Time to work.
Let's start our